Have you ever felt like you've given everything for someone, only to realize that they weren't giving you anything in return? For decades, I put everyone else's needs before my own. I was the wife, the mother, the caregiver. And yet, when it came time to receive love, attention, or even a simple moment of kindness, it felt like I was invisible. But what if one day, you finally discovered the truth? The truth that everything you thought you knew about your life and your family was nothing more than a carefully constructed lie. This is the story of how I, Amanda, spent 30 years believing in a marriage that wasn't what it seemed. A marriage where Thanksgiving became just another excuse for my husband to escape from me, and my children to blame me for wanting more. But one year I decided to change things. Followed him. And what I discovered would change everything. A betrayal so deep, it shattered my world. But instead of breaking me, it set me free. For as long as I can remember, Thanksgiving was always spent apart. My husband, Duff, and I had a silent agreement. Every year he'd go to his family, and I'd go to mine. It wasn't a big deal, or at least that's what I told myself. It became the way things were, the way I accepted them. But deep down, there was always this quiet yearning inside of me. I longed for us to spend the holiday together, just the two of us. But every year when I'd mention it, there would be a flicker of unease in his eyes, followed by a quick dismissal. This year, though, something inside me shifted. I was tired of waiting for him to make an effort, tired of feeling like I was living on the sidelines of my own life. So I decided to do something about it. I booked a train ticket to his family's home, hoping that this year things would be different. When I arrived, I wasn't prepared for what I found. There in front of me was not just a holiday gathering, but the truth that had been hidden for decades. My husband, the man I had spent my life with, wasn't there waiting for me. Instead, he was sitting next to his first love, the woman he had been hiding from me all along. In that moment, everything changed. I stood frozen, watching a scene unfold that had been kept secret for far too long. The family I thought I knew, the life I had spent years building, suddenly became a lie. And as I stood there, feeling the cold winds of betrayal blow through me, one thing became crystal clear. I was no longer going to live in the shadows of this lie. For as long as I can remember, I had lived a life of sacrifice, quietly putting everyone else's needs above my own. I was Amanda, a wife, a mother, and a caregiver, always in the background, always doing for others, but never asking for anything in return. It was how I was raised, and it was how I thought love was supposed to look: sacrificial, selfless, and unquestioning. Thanksgiving had always been a time of separation in our family. Every year my husband, Duff, and I would go to our respective families. His in one direction, mine in another. It wasn't a big deal, I told myself. After all, this was the way things had always been. The years passed and I simply accepted it. But over time, a quiet yearning began to stir within me. I had spent so many years looking after our children, caring for our home, and supporting Duff in everything he did, while never asking for a thing in return. I began to wonder, what if, just once, we could spend Thanksgiving together as a family? What if, for once, I could feel like I mattered just as much as his commitments to everyone else? It wasn't an extravagant wish, just a simple desire for connection, for us to celebrate the holiday together. So, this year I decided to break the pattern. I gathered up my courage and suggested we spend Thanksgiving together, just the two of us. I thought it would be a simple request, but when I made the suggestion, I was met with an unexpected response. Duff's face immediately fell, and there was a coldness in his voice as he dismissed the idea. "Didn't we agree that every year we go to our own families and spend Thanksgiving separately?" he asked, frowning. "Why are you changing your mind now?" The words stung, and as he spoke, I could feel the weight of the years I had spent quietly accepting the role of the invisible partner. As he spoke, our children, standing nearby, chimed in too, urging me to keep up with the times. "Why can't you understand, Mom? Young couples don't do this anymore. They spend the holiday with their own families, and it's fine." Their words were polite but dismissive, like they were telling me that my feelings didn't matter. In that moment, the quiet frustration I had been carrying for years started to bubble to the surface. I had always done what was expected of me, always put everyone else's needs first. And yet, when I asked for something so simple, it felt like a burden. As Duff's dismissive tone lingered in the air, I realized just how little I had been asking for all these years, and just how little I had been receiving in return. It was at that moment that a small spark of frustration began to grow inside me. I had always accepted this life, but now it was no longer enough. As Duff's words lingered in the air, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in my chest. 4 years I had quietly accepted our routine, never questioning why he always seemed so eager to go off to his family, year after year, while I stayed behind. But something had shifted inside me that day. I realized I couldn't continue living in this quiet, unspoken pattern. I had to know the truth. I needed to understand why, after all these years, he wouldn't spend Thanksgiving with me. Was it really just tradition, or was there something more? While Duff was busy dismissing my suggestion, I did something I had never done before. I bought a train ticket to his family's home, without him knowing. I was going to follow him, find out for myself why he always went there. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to find, but I knew I had to face it head-on. If he was hiding something, I would find out. No more waiting in silence. No more pretending everything was fine. Part of me wondered if I was just being unreasonable. After all, he had always been kind, always provided for the family. Maybe this was just my moment of frustration, my need for something that wasn't so important. But I couldn't help asking myself, what could possibly be so wrong with wanting to be with him this year? I tried to convince myself that maybe I was overreacting, that my feelings were just a passing phase. But deep down I knew I had to see it for myself. Something was telling me that the truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and I couldn't go on pretending I didn't care. As the train pulled away from the station, I felt a wave of anxiety. What would I find when I got there? Would the truth be more painful than I could bear? I didn't know, but there was no turning back now. This was my chance to confront the one thing I had never dared to question, my own life. As I stepped off the train and made my way to Duff's family home, I felt a knot of anxiety twisting in my stomach. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but something inside me kept pushing me forward. The truth had been nagging at me for too long, and I was finally ready to face it. When I arrived, the door was open, and I walked in to find a scene I wasn't prepared for. My husband, the man I had shared a life with for 30 years, wasn't alone. Sitting beside him was Alicia, his first love. The woman I had heard so much about, but never truly met. There they were, smiling, laughing, as if they had been living in their own world for years. I stood frozen in the doorway, a wave of shock washing over me. For the first time in my life, I truly saw the betrayal in my marriage. My heart sank as I watched Alicia pull out her phone and update her social media. The caption read, "Another Thanksgiving, may we have another 30 years together." There they were, together in the photo, with children in the background. Her children, not mine. In that moment everything clicked. I had always been told that Duff spent Thanksgiving with his long-lost relatives, but here was the truth. For decades, he had been spending these holidays with Alicia, using family traditions as an excuse to keep her in his life. I could feel the weight of those lost years pressing down on me. I could barely breathe as the realization hit me. 30 years of marriage, and for so long I had been living a lie. How could I not have seen it? How could I have been so blind? The man I had trusted, the man I had raised children with, had been lying to me year after year. I had spent every Thanksgiving alone, not because he was honoring some family tradition, but because he had been with her. The pain of the realization was overwhelming. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of the lies, each one stacking higher than the last. The man I had given everything to wasn't the man I thought he was. I wanted to scream. I wanted to confront them both right there, but all I could do was stand there, numb, as my world began to crumble. In that moment, I knew I couldn't go back. The truth had been laid bare, and I couldn't unsee what I had just discovered. What would I do now? What was I supposed to feel? I wasn't sure, but one thing was certain. I couldn't stay in this lie any longer. As I stood there, in the cold silence of Duff's family home, everything began to fall apart. The truth was right in front of me, but as the memories rushed back, I realized that the signs had been there all along, hidden in plain sight. I had been so blinded by my loyalty, so caught up in the rhythm of our daily lives, that I never questioned the small things. But now, as I looked back, I could see them clearly, like a trail of breadcrumbs leading straight to the betrayal I had never imagined. The first thing that came to mind was the necklace. Duff had spent weeks crafting it, telling me it was a family heirloom for our daughter. He even made a big deal about it, saying how special it was for her. But now I couldn't help but wonder, was it really for our daughter? Well, it was for Alicia. It was a gesture meant for her, not me, not our daughter. The truth had always been there, but I had never questioned it, thinking I was simply the supportive wife, waiting for him to give his attention when he could. And then there were the Polaroid films. Every year, without fail, Duff would buy a new pack before Thanksgiving, telling me he was going to capture the memories we were making. But after every holiday, those films remained untouched, never developed, never seen. I had always thought he was too busy or distracted to get around to it. But now it was clear. Those photos never existed because the memories weren't being made with me. They were made with Alicia. And the scarf. Oh, the scarf. I had knit it for him with love year after year, just like he had asked. Each time, he promised he would embroider plum blossoms on it, a symbol of our love. But the scarf never saw the light of day. It hung in the closet, untouched, year after year. I had believed his excuses. He was too busy, too tired, too preoccupied. Now I realized it was never about the scarf. It was about the time, the effort, and the thought that he could never spare for me. But the most painful memory of all was the day I found the tickets. I had been cleaning out a drawer, just like any other day, when I stumbled upon 2 plane tickets to Duff's hometown. My heart skipped a beat. I thought, finally, this is it. This is the year he's going to take me back with him. We'll visit his family together. We'll be a family again. I was so excited. I called my parents to let them know I wouldn't be spending Thanksgiving with them this year, and I waited eagerly for Duff to bring up the trip. But as the days passed, he never mentioned it. The tickets lay there in the drawer, a quiet reminder of the lies I had been living. The trip was never for us. It was never meant for me. And now I understood. I had been fooled just like every other time. All these little signs had been scattered throughout the years, waiting to be noticed, but I had never questioned them. I had always believed in the love we shared, in the promises Duff had made. But now, with the truth laid bare before me, I realized how much I had missed, how much I had overlooked. The memories we had built together, the life we had supposedly shared, were built on lies. And now I had to face them head-on. After the painful discovery, I could no longer stay silent. I needed to confront my family, the people who were supposed to be my support system, the ones I had given everything for. My children, David and were the ones who always told me how much they cared, how much they appreciated me. But now, as I stood there, shaking with the weight of the truth, I wondered, would they stand by me, or would they side with their father? I took a deep breath and shared what I had discovered. I explained how Duff had spent 30 years lying to me, spending Thanksgiving with Alicia instead of us. I felt a mixture of sadness and anger as I spoke, my words tumbling out in waves. I wanted them to understand. I needed them to see that this wasn't just about a holiday. It was about betrayal, about decades of deceit. But as I looked at my children's faces, I didn't see the sympathy or understanding I had hoped for. Instead, I saw confusion, impatience, and what hurt the most, dismissiveness. David, with his stern expression, immediately started talking over me, his voice laced with frustration. "Mom, it's not like that. It's normal for couples to spend holidays apart these days," he said, his words sharp and cutting. "Why can't you just understand? This is how things are now. You're just too old-fashioned." Eva the peacemaker tried to step in. She gently took my hand, her voice sweet but patronizing. "Mom, think about it. If I moved far away and couldn't come back for Thanksgiving, wouldn't you miss me? Dad just wants what's best for us. It's better this way. Her tone was soft, but there was an edge to it that made my chest tighten. The more they spoke, the more I felt like I was suffocating. How had we come to this? How had they, my own children, become so used to my self-sacrifice, so conditioned to my quiet acceptance, that they couldn't see the pain in my eyes? I had spent years caring for them, carrying the weight of the household, the weight of our family. Yet now, they defended the very man who had been lying to me for decades. The man who had treated me like I was invisible. David's impatient tone hit me like a slap in the face. He spoke to me as if I were the one in the wrong, as if my need for a little respect and honesty was some outdated, unreasonable demand. Oz's attempt to placate me only deepened the wound. "It's not that big of a deal, Mom," she said, shaking her head as though I were overreacting. "It's just Thanksgiving. Don't you want to relax? We're just trying to make this easier for you." I felt a wave of isolation wash over me. The very people I had spent my life nurturing, the ones I thought would stand by me, had turned their backs in favor of protecting their father's lies. It wasn't just Duff who had betrayed me. In that moment, I realized that my children, too, had become so accustomed to my quiet, sacrificial role in their lives that they couldn't even see my pain. They couldn't see that this wasn't just about one holiday. It was about years of emotional neglect, about living in a marriage where my needs and my feelings never mattered. What do you think of Amanda's situation? Have you ever felt like your self-sacrifice was taken for granted by those closest to you? How would you have handled the betrayal and coldness from your own family? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts and feelings. I'd love to hear how you would have reacted in Amanda's shoes, and whether you've experienced anything similar in your own life. Your comments help create a space for all of us to connect and reflect on these emotional moments together. Let's talk. After hearing my children's cold dismissal and reflecting on the years of my own quiet suffering, something inside me snapped. The lies, the secrets, and now the indifference from my own family had pushed me to the edge. I had spent my life walking on eggshells, doing everything for everyone else, always putting my needs and desires last. But I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that this marriage, this life, was enough. The frustration, the bitterness, it had all been building for too long, and it was finally spilling over. Duff, seeing my silence, misread it as a sign of weakness. He brushed off my feelings as he always had. When I confronted him, the man I had spent decades with, about what I had discovered, his response was not one of guilt or remorse. No, instead, he had the audacity to accuse me of ruining the holiday. His cold words stung. He dismissed my pain as nothing more than a mere disruption. "Can you just stop thinking on a whim?" he snapped, frowning. "We've always spent Thanksgiving apart. Why is it suddenly such a big deal?" It was as if everything I had sacrificed, all the years I had spent trying to keep our family together, meant nothing. And that was the moment it became clear to me. He was never going to change. He would always prioritize his own comfort, his own happiness, and leave me to pick up the pieces. The words burned. I had been patient, I had been understanding for far too long. But in that moment something shifted deep inside me. I stood up. My heart was racing, my hands trembling, but my resolve was clear. I had spent so many years being the quiet wife, the dutiful mother, but no more. I was done. I was done living in the shadows of his lies. I was done pretending that his disregard for me was something I could live with. I couldn't keep silent any longer. "You've lied to me for 30 years. I'm done. I'm done pretending everything is fine," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. But even as I spoke the words, my emotions surged, and in a moment of pure, raw frustration, I grabbed the nearest pillow and threw it at him. It wasn't just a pillow, it was everything I had been holding back. The pain, the hurt, the years of silence, the disappointment. I had spent my life swallowing my feelings for the sake of keeping the peace. But in that moment, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Get out," I demanded, my voice now filled with anger and heartbreak. "I'm done with this. Leave." There, standing in front of him, I could feel my heart heavy with grief, but also lighter than it had felt in years. I was exhausted, yes, but for the first time I also felt free. "I'm setting you free," I said, my voice low but firm. I wasn't just kicking him out of the house. I was setting myself free from the weight of this marriage, from the lies and the betrayal. I could see the shock in his eyes. He was taken aback, as if he never expected me to stand up for myself. His face twisted into a mix of confusion and guilt, but there was no going back. I had made up my mind. I was done. As Duff stood there, speechless, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Yes, my heart was heavy with sadness, with years of unspoken pain, but there was also something else, an undeniable sense of liberation. I was no longer living in his shadow. I was finally living for myself. After the confrontation, there was no going back. As I stood in the aftermath of the most painful moment of my life, the truth felt like a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. Duff's betrayal, the years of emotional neglect, the lies that had woven their way through our entire marriage. It was all too much to ignore any longer. The life I had built, the love I had poured into this marriage, suddenly felt like a facade. And standing there, in the quiet of the house that had once been my home, I knew I couldn't continue living this lie. Duff, still trying to justify his actions, tried to speak. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said, his voice desperate. "You know that. I've made mistakes. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." He reached out to me, but his words only seemed to echo with empty promises. I had heard it all before. I had spent years forgiving him, excusing his actions, hoping he would change. But nothing ever did. It was always the same cycle. The excuses, the lies, the broken promises. But this time I wasn't going to accept it anymore. The years of pain, the years of feeling invisible, those years had taken their toll on me. I had lost myself somewhere along the way, and I wasn't willing to lose any more. When Duff asked me to stay, to reconsider, I looked at him with cold resolve. There was no more anger left in me, no more pain to cry over, only clarity. "Give me a time when we can arrange the divorce," I said, my voice steady. "And you can go back to Alicia." The words were final. They were not a plea for understanding or sympathy. They were a declaration of the end. I had seen the truth, and I wasn't going to pretend any longer. There was no room for negotiation, no more promises that would be broken. I was done. The years of putting everyone else's needs above my own had brought me to this point. I had allowed myself to be swallowed by someone else's life, and now I was reclaiming mine. After the divorce papers were signed and the dust had settled, I stood at the threshold of a new life. I could feel the weight of the past lifting off my shoulders, the burden of years spent in a marriage built on lies and neglect finally falling away. For the first time in decades, I was no longer defined by the roles I had played for others. Wife, mother, caregiver. I was simply Amanda. I was free. The years of self-sacrifice, of constantly putting everyone else's needs above mine, had left me hollow. I had forgotten what it felt like to do something just for me, to make a decision based on my own desires and not the expectations of others. But now, with the freedom of a clean slate, I was ready to rediscover myself. I began to explore what it meant to live for me. I signed up for activities I had once dreamed of doing, traveled to places I had always wanted to visit, and slowly, I began to remember who I was before the responsibilities of family and marriage had consumed me. Every day felt like a new opportunity, a chance to reclaim parts of myself I had long ago set aside. One afternoon I decided to take a small step, a step for myself. I went to the mall, something I hadn't done in years. For so long, shopping had been about buying what the family needed, picking up things for the house or getting new clothes for the kids. But this time I walked through the mall, no agenda, no one to shop for but myself. And then I saw it. A bright red dress, hanging there, vibrant and bold, a stark contrast to the muted colors I had once gravitated toward. It caught my eye, and for the first time in years I didn't hesitate. I picked it up, tried it on, and when I looked at myself in the mirror, I couldn't help but smile. The reflection staring back at me was different. I wasn't the woman who had been trapped in the background for so long. I was alive again, filled with a sense of purpose and possibility. As I stood there, looking at myself in the red dress, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: joy. A quiet but powerful joy that came from knowing that for once, I was making a choice for me, and not for anyone else. I wasn't just existing, I was living. And that was enough. After months of living in my new freedom, something unexpected happened. One afternoon, while sitting in a quiet cafe, I decided to share my journey online. At first, it was just a way to document my thoughts, a way to reflect on how far I had come. But as I clicked post, something inside me felt different. This wasn't just about me anymore. It felt like the beginning of something bigger, a conversation I never thought I'd be part of. I shared the highs and the lows, the difficult decisions, and the moments of liberation. I wasn't looking for fame or recognition. I just wanted to connect with others, especially women who might be going through something similar. I posted about my divorce, my struggles, and how I had finally found the courage to walk away from a life of self-sacrifice and emotional neglect. To my surprise, the response was overwhelming. Comments poured in, thousands of them, from women of all ages and backgrounds, many of them older just like me. They shared their own stories of feeling trapped, of losing themselves in relationships, and of finally finding the courage to reclaim their lives. The messages of support and admiration flooded my inbox, each one more heartfelt than the last. I had unintentionally become a voice for so many women who had lived in silence, just as I had for years. In one of my posts, I shared a simple message: "May everyone have the courage to start over." Those words resonated deeply with so many people. The comments poured in, full of gratitude and admiration, as women from all walks of life shared how my story had inspired them to take that first step toward their own freedom. "You've given me hope," one woman wrote. "I thought it was too late for me. But now I see it's never too late to start over." For the first time in my life, I began to see myself in a new light. I wasn't just the invisible wife or the overworked mother. I was a woman with strength, with worth, with a voice. I was a role model, not because I was perfect or had everything figured out, but because I had found the courage to embrace my own life, to take ownership of my story, and to share it with others. It felt surreal but deeply fulfilling. It was a bright, sunny afternoon when I unexpectedly ran into Duff and Alicia after delivering a speech at a local event. I was still on a high from the experience, feeling the surge of empowerment from sharing my journey with others. As I exited the building, there they were, standing in front of the entrance just a few feet away. For a brief moment I froze. The years of hurt, the betrayal, the anger, it all rushed back in an instant. But then something inside me shifted. I wasn't that woman anymore. I wasn't the one stuck in a marriage of lies and deceit. I was Amanda, strong, independent, and free. As I looked at them, I couldn't help but notice the difference in them. Alicia, who had once seemed so poised and graceful, now wore an air of exhaustion and frustration. The facade she had maintained so carefully had begun to crack. Her eyes, which had once been full of pride and control, now seemed dimmed and defeated. And Duff, he had aged considerably. His confident posture, the one I had once admired, now seemed tired, burdened. He looked like a man who had spent too many years holding up a mask that no longer fit. I realized then that the people standing before me weren't the same people I had once known. Alicia, the woman who had been a symbol of everything I thought was perfect, had lost her charm. And Duff, my husband of 30 years, was no longer the man I had clung to for so long. Both of them had crumbled in ways I couldn't have imagined. And in that moment I realized something else. I didn't need them to be who I thought they were. I no longer needed anyone to define me. Duff, noticing the confidence I now radiated, took a step toward me, his voice faltering as he asked, "Are you okay, Amanda?" There was genuine concern in his eyes, but it wasn't the kind of concern I had once longed for. It was too late, too little. And as I stood there, seeing the man who had broken me, I knew this was it. I wasn't angry anymore, just indifferent. The years of hurt had melted away, and all that remained was the quiet strength I had built for myself. I looked at him, and without a hint of emotion I replied, "I'm doing well. How's the family?" The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything I had been through, everything I had learned. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need closure from them. I had already given myself that. This final encounter served as the ultimate closure for me. It wasn't about rage or bitterness. It wasn't about getting revenge or having the last word. It was about walking away for good from the life that had held me captive for so long. I realized that I didn't need Duff or Alicia or anyone else to validate my worth. I had spent so many years defining myself through others, but now I was finally seeing myself for who I truly was. A woman who had the power to shape her own future, a future where I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And with that, I turned and walked away from them both, leaving the past behind me. The road ahead was still uncertain, but it was mine. And that was enough. Amanda's journey has been long, filled with heartache, frustration, and moments of self-doubt. But now, as I reflect on everything I've been through, I realize just how far I've come. I'm no longer the woman who quietly accepted betrayal and neglect from those I loved. I'm not the wife who put everyone else's needs before her own. I've shed that version of myself, like a snake shedding its skin, because I finally understood something crucial. I deserve to be loved, respected, and appreciated, just like anyone else. I've learned to listen to my own voice, to trust my instincts, and to value my own happiness. For so many years, I allowed myself to be defined by others, by the roles I played as a wife, a mother, a caretaker. I forgot that before all those roles, I was simply me, a woman with dreams, desires, and needs of her own. Now, I've reclaimed that woman, the one who had been buried under years of sacrifice and compromise. No, it's not been easy. Walking away from a 30-year marriage, from the life I knew, was the hardest thing I've ever done. But as each day passes, I feel stronger, more certain that I made the right decision. I'm not just surviving, I'm living. I'm discovering parts of myself I never knew existed. I'm exploring the world and embracing the future with open arms, knowing that it's mine to shape. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to Amanda's story. It's a powerful reminder that no matter how long we've been stuck in a situation, or how much we've sacrificed for others, we always have the power to choose a new path. The real lesson here is about finding the courage to prioritize yourself, to reclaim your life, and to never stop chasing your dreams, even when it feels like it's too late. What did you think about Amanda's journey? What lesson did you take away from her story? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss any future stories that can inspire you to start living life on your own terms. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.